Welcome to the summit of Mentor Mountain, everybody. My name is Cole, and if you didn't know, Naples, Florida is one of the richest cities in the United States. And Mike Park has built a referral-based business, no advertising needed, in that city. And he's done so and kept teams of his own employees busy with the business that draws in. And today we get to learn how he's done it. And trust me, there are trials and failures along the way of which we will be able to learn from him. And I just know that you're going to enjoy the episode. He's a great guy. Now, before we get into it, if we haven't met before, my name is Cole. And this is a show where people who have done amazing things get to tell their stories and share wisdom with us all. So if you like that kind of thing, please drop a like and subscribe. If you're listening on a podcast platform, please leave a review or stay tuned for future episodes. Now, let's get on with the show. Mike Park, thanks for joining us.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So what made you become an entrepreneur?
You know, that's a good question. I never sought out to be an entrepreneur. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My mom taught gymnastics and we had a gymnasium built onto our house. And my basement was a tumbling floor. We had a trampoline, uneven bars. And so my mom, she had her own business, and my dad was a general contractor. I used to work with him every summer, almost. I would go and work with him, and he would teach me how to do stuff. And I mean, even from a little kid. And during the wintertime, my dad would sell Christmas trees, and I would go and work for him selling Christmas trees. My first kind of exposure to doing my own thing, I guess, would have been with him. I don't know, I was probably about 8 or 10 years old. And when my dad would trim the trees, he would cut the tops off. And he made his own custom-made flocking machine. He'd spray them with a little white powder and had the hose he'd squirt it on and do all that. And I took the top of this little tiny tree, and we had just a little cleat, which is basically just a 4x4 little piece of wood, and I put a nail through it, and I put it on top and made a little tree. And I showed my dad. I'm like, hey, I made my own little Christmas tree. And he thought that was the neatest thing.
That's so cool.
And for the first couple of years, I didn't do anything with it. But every year I would make a couple of little trees or kind of play around with them. And my dad's like, why don't you sell those? So I started making these little trees, and I sold them for like 50 cents a piece. And they sold like hotcakes.
That's so cool.
Over the next few years, that developed into, I used to go and work for him hourly. And then when I was done hourly, I would clock out and I'd go work on my trees. Well, I got so successful at selling those little trees, I didn't even work for my dad anymore. I mean, I would show up, go do my trees. They would sell them. And my stepmother and my oldest brother, who was my dad's partner, they saw this and they saw like, hey, you're not even working anymore. Okay. You're working for yourself, but they did not appreciate that.
Yeah.
You need to be learning, you need to be working hourly, you need to be doing this for dad. And my oldest brother, he kind of got down on me a little bit about it. And my stepmom, she didn't like the idea that I just come in and I'd like, money, please, like pay me at the end of every night, and I'd go home with wads of cash. And she's like, for a 12-year-old kid, he should not be making that much money, because I could make way more money doing that than I could working hourly for my dad. So my dad pulled me aside and says, hey, I'm going to have to charge you some overhead. And, the materials are mine. The shop's mine. So I'm going to charge you 10%. And I didn't balk. I'm like, okay, sure. Great. I raised my price 20%, and I ended up making an extra 10% because he threw that in there.
Right now is a great time for you to stop and appreciate that like button. Go ahead, smash the like button. And while you're doing so, let me tell you a little bit more about Mike. He went on later, after various jobs in his early career. He ended up starting a soffit siding and fascia company for construction and residential construction of homes. And that's where the next part of our story begins, is with the lessons he's learned from that company.
Right out of the get-go, I hired this other guy to do rain gutter for me. And so I was selling the rain gutter with it. He'd come in and install it for me because he had a machine and everything. And we ran into the wrong client. He was very, very particular about how everything had to be perfect. Everything had to be just right. And there was nothing wrong with my soffit and fascia. Nothing wrong at all. But when the guy went to hang the gutter, he hung the he hung all of the gutter just too low in certain areas, and so it was actually below the drip edge in some areas. And the homeowner was upset about that, and it wasn't leaking. It wasn't a problem. It's just he could tell it wasn't done correctly. So I told him, "Oh, no problem. I'll create a flashing to go up underneath there and into the rain gutter, and that'll solve the problem."
Yeah.
He wouldn't accept that. He says, "No, the rain gutter has to be tore off and redone, and because there's holes in your fascia, all the fascia has to be tore off and be redone, or I'm not paying you." And so, I mean, I just literally, I bought my materials on credit. I had
Yeah.
no money whatsoever, just started out. And I talked to the rain gutter guy, and he was another young kid like myself, started his own business. And there was just, we tried to negotiate and talk with this guy, and there was just no way about it. And so the rain gutter guy said, I'm going to walk away. I'm going to go take down my gutter, and you find somebody else. And so I went and I put up new fascia, replaced all the fascia. I got another rain gutter guy to come and put up the rain gutter, and paid him. But I learned something at that juncture, and that's don't ever cut corners.
That's a
Don't ever do something that's not absolutely the correct way to do it, because you'll pay for it in the end.
yeah.
I had to buy new fascia, my labor, my time, everything that I put into that. It was kind of a light bulb moment, like, okay, remember this, don't let this happen again. And that really put the emphasis on quality work, and what you needed to do to make it right.
What was the conversation with your wife about starting your own business and and growing money that way?
I'm amazed at the faith my wife had in me. She thought that I was so much more competent than I actually was. Truthfully. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. I was literally just making it up as I went along. And I'm like, well, why? And a lot of it was just naivety.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I didn't know. And
Yeah.
so I just, nah, I can figure it out. And I just kind of had that attitude that I would figure it out. And somehow I would, one way or another. And I learned, I made a lot of mistakes. And that's really how you learn.
Yeah.
You have to learn from those mistakes. You can't let them discourage you, because there's so many times where, she's like, well, maybe I'd have just got to get another job. She like, her big thing was security. I need to feel secure. I need to feel that you're going to be able to take care of our family.
Yeah.
And if you can do this on your own, great. But if you can't, you're going back to work for somebody else. And that kind of put pressure on me to be successful. I didn't want to fail. I didn't want to fail her.
Yeah.
And so she did extend a lot of faith in me, but it wasn't just blind faith. It was like, you better perform.
Yeah.
You better figure this out. And so really it was just tenacity. I went out and really I hustled work. That's how I got work. I wasn't afraid to knock on doors, to cold call people. Hey, what's your bid? I'll beat your bid by $500. I mean, I'd come up with all kinds of strategies to try to get that job. And, it seemed to work for me.
If you haven't liked this video yet, please like the video. Mike was not only scrappy with the stuff he did know how to do, he was also scrappy with the stuff he had no idea how to do. Like this.
Okay. Hey, let's do windows. Why not? Let's start replacing windows in homes. And hey, while we're at it, let's sell windows to new construction contractors. And my wife's like, do you know anything about windows? I'm like, nope. I didn't even know how to install them. I ordered an entire job of windows for a new construction house and agreed to install them. Never installed a window before.
Oh, man. That is crazy.
I was about 5 windows in before I realized, oh, you gotta use flashing? Oh, okay, I didn't know that. So I had to pull the windows out, put flashing in, start asking a lot of questions.
And this was before YouTube.
Oh yeah. People, this generation has no idea how much information is at your fingertips.
So much. Even though Mike was working extremely hard, there was an external circumstance coming to rock his world.
I actually started doing pretty good for a little while. until they announced the Olympics was coming to Utah. I think that was back in 1997 is when they announced the 2002 Olympics.
Mm.
And shortly after that, every contractor and their dog came to Utah looking for work.
Mm.
A lot of residential contractors, and it was mostly commercial work and infrastructure that was going in. But Utah just seemed to be a great state. People flocked there, and I remember bidding work, and I was bidding work cheaper than I had been 8 years prior. That's how
Oh
bad and
man.
how competitive the market was. And it got to the point where, and I built a house up in Linden, and I bought a boat. I kind of got ahead of myself because, things were going well.
Yeah.
And had things continued on that trajectory, I would have been fine.
Yeah.
But when the market softened and everything really slowed down, that really hit me hard. And I tried to salvage it. I took out a second mortgage on my home, took out some equity to try to make things float. And I told you I'd started to get into windows. And so I was doing windows for a couple of contractors, had some stuff going on for some homeowners. And I had two homeowners and one major contractor all claim bankruptcy on me within 3
No.
months. And I
Oh
just borrowed all
no.
this money from the bank to climb out of this hole, and I'm right back in the hole, and I'm literally like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
What am I going to do? I'm looking at my books, and I'm realizing in 6 months I am bankrupt. No
Mm.
matter what I do, I you know, there's the profit margin is so low now on these jobs, and I can't bid it higher because I wouldn't get the work. People are just undercutting me left and right, and I'm realizing like I gotta change. I gotta do something different. And so I was desperate. I did not know what to do. I remember
Mm.
sitting in my basement, crying,
Mm.
praying, getting on my knees, begging God, please help me find a way out of this. What am I gonna do? There's got to be some way I can salvage this. And I'm looking for a pile of cash to appear in the corner is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
That's where my mind was at. Can you just send me? Is there an inheritance somewhere I haven't gotten? A lottery ticket I need to buy? What?
Yeah.
Uh, I'm looking for the easy fix, and I was just really at the pits of despair. And I
Mm.
hadn't told my wife; she had no idea what was going on. And I'm realizing that my entire world is getting ready to crumble on me, and it hollowed me out.
Mm.
I felt like a shell of a man. I felt like such a failure. Like I can't believe I was in this predicament.
Yeah.
And part of it was my own fault, and part of it was just circumstances of being in a soft market and people pulling the plug.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot you can do on that. So I finally broke it to my wife, and I was so scared. I
Mm.
was so terrified to tell my wife,
How did your
well,
wife
you know what
take
you
it?
said not to do? So much better than I thought.
Oh, good.
But she was absolute. She's like, well, we're not claiming bankruptcy and living here,
Mm.
so we're moving. She's like, I can't stand the embarrassment and facing these people, and yeah, no, we're And my brother-in-law, who was also in the construction industry, they had moved out to Florida,
Mm.
which is where I'm at now. We used to come out here all the time. We'd come out here almost every year. We'd go to Disney World. We'd go on a cruise. We'd stay with them. We'd go to the beach. And my brother-in-law was always trying to get me to move out here. And there's so much work, and he was always talking it up. And at the time, I had no interest in moving to Florida. I've never lived anywhere but Utah. It just kind of scared me to even think about it, and I had no desires. But once I realized I had no choice, my wife's like, "Yeah, we're not staying here.
Mm.
Where do you want to move to?" And obviously, they'd been talking about the market, and so I flew out here to Florida. I spent 2 weeks out here doing research on the market. What could I do? How could I do it? How could I make this work? I don't have any accounts. I don't have any contractors. I don't have any business. I have nothing out here to start over with, but I'm between a rock and a hard spot.
Yeah.
And so we made the decision. Okay, well we're gonna do it. We hired a moving company, loaded everything up, equipment and all. I had my car and my truck both had hitches on them, and I had two trailers. I towed the rain gutter machine with me, and then the other trailer had all my ladders and planks and all my siding equipment on it.
Mm.
And we drove all the way across the country. We were lucky to find a house that somebody had pulled out of. We
Mm.
were able to step into it. Was almost done. And I mean, we closed on that, really, because here I have all this looming debt in Utah, and we were able to get in. and they changed the closing on us. They changed the amount on us. I mean, I'm borrowing everything. I'm down to just scraps of pennies to even have that final amount to be able to close on this house,
Yeah.
knowing that doom and gloom is about ready to overtake me in the background. And at the time, I actually thought I had a pretty good plan
Mm-hmm.
that I was going to be able to pay everybody off.
Yeah.
And I because I couldn't stomach the fact that I was going to leave people hanging.
Yeah.
Like I was, my dad really instilled in me a lot of integrity, and you're a man of your word, and you pay your bills. And so I was really struggling with that. And I had this plan once we got out here and got things going. Well, through some unfortunate events and some letters that got sent to all of my suppliers and my banker and everybody under the sun, the wolves descended. But
Mm.
luckily we'd got into the house. But then all my creditors came for me, and the wolves descended, and I'm fighting them off. And I got to the point where I had no choice, but I had to declare bankruptcy, and that was a humbling experience because I felt like crap.
Yeah.
I mean, I loathed myself. I just couldn't believe that I was at that point.
Despite financial challenges, life still goes on.
When I first got out here, I started working for my brother-in-law, just hourly. In fact, I don't think it was hourly. I think he was paying me $200 a day, and I was so distraught. I remember at the end of the day him handing me $200, and I'm like,
Mm.
thank you. Like I didn't even feel like I deserved the $200. I just like
Mm.
was just so down myself. And I would look back and I'm like, how did I own my own business? How did I manage employees? Like I couldn't fathom that I had done that before. I was
Mm.
in such a state of despair, and I'd given up. Like I'm not going to be able to do this again. And those were some dark times to really go through. I'd lost hope. I'd lost the fire. I didn't see a way out. I figured, well, I guess I'm just going to work for my brother-in-law the rest of my life. I mean, it was just, you
Yeah.
know, but that passed.
How long were you working for your
I
brother-in-law
realized,
for?
you know, probably only about 6 months. I mean, I worked for him off and on steadily as a steady income for about 6 months.
Mm.
And then I picked up some side work for a cabinet maker installing cabinets. And I'd done that with my dad. I knew a little bit about it. And it was kind of my dad's passion was cabinetry. He loved making cabinets.
Mm.
And I mean, I just hated everything construction back then. And I didn't even realize like, oh, I know how to do this.
Mm.
Oh, I remember this. I remember my dad teaching me that. Oh yeah. And so that kind of rekindled a little bit like, okay, I can do this. And so when I started installing the cabinets for this guy, he was like, hey, you're good. In fact, I want you on my high end jobs because these other guys, they screw up the moldings all the time. And you're like all of your moldings, because it's stain grade. It's not like there's no caulk, there's no putty, there's no paint. You
Mm.
cut it perfect or it doesn't look good. And
Yeah.
so I realized I did kind of have a skill set. I was very detail oriented. I could do good work. So I started doing a lot of installs for him. And, but he had some of his own problems. He ended up going bankrupt himself.
Mm.
And so that work kind of drew up. And at the time, I was trying to put myself out there. And so I got one client here, one client there. I do a little work for my brother in law, another client here. And just kind of got, kind of got my fire back like, oh, I can do this. I can get back on this. I do have a skill set. And I can't worry about what I had before and getting that back, but what can I do today? What can I do to provide for my family? What can I do? I mean, I was paying I think my interest rate on the loan when we got into the house like 7%,
Mm.
which is, not bad now, but,
Yeah.
at the time, I think the average rate was like 3-4%, but
Oh,
because of
wow.
what I was going through, I got kind of hit with some harsh penalties there. And I think my mortgage payment was $2,800 a month.
Oh, that's a ton for
This
that time.
this is 20 no, not 23 years ago, 22 years ago. 22 years ago.
Yeah,
That was a hefty amount.
that is a
And
hefty amount.
my it got pretty hard. I mean, when I was working for my brother-in-law, my wife actually started working. Her and her sister started doing construction cleanup. Which is the first time my wife has worked outside of the home. She always just took care of the kids, and had to put my youngest in daycare. My kids, that was a traumatic experience for my kids moving out here.
Mm.
Growing up in Utah County, a lot of Mormons, teachers don't swear. The
Yeah.
first day of school, my kids come home crying because my teacher swore all day long. They said GD and and all this stuff, and just they were
Oh,
distraught.
dang
And
it.
both my kids, they as soon as they turned 18, they went out to Utah to back to school. Said all these fond memories of how great Utah was, and I can't wait to when I'm older, I'm going to move to Utah. And it's all these things they wanted to do, and they just kind of romanticized what that was, but it was hard. It was hard for them. It was
Yeah.
hard for our whole family. But
Mike's the perfect example of just keep going because he eventually made it out to where hope rekindled again, but it took time. But he didn't stop.
we slowly crawled out of it. I slowly started doing a little bit more business. I got to the point where I had a storage unit, and I got a cabinet line that I could buy, and I started selling my own cabinets. And I had 5 doors. I mean, they made like 200 doors, but I could only afford 5 samples. And I would take them to the people's home, and I'm like, well, here's the 5 doors you can choose from, and here's what I can do. And I had these brochures, and I had this stuff, and I literally just started peddling my wares again, and selling jobs, and really selling myself. I think that's kind of been one of the things that's really helped me. I wasn't selling the product or selling, I was selling me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do the job. I'm going to make sure that it's right. I guarantee it. And I would use that word again. I could guarantee you're going to be happy. And, I tried to put that out there and really sell myself as the product,
Mm.
not what I was doing or how I was going to do it. And, that it was a slow start, and there were hit and misses, a lot of ups and downs. Um, the good day was when I finally hired my first employee. All right, getting back on going, getting some,
Man.
now I can afford to hire somebody, and somebody can help me do the work and hold that heavy cabinet that I'm trying to do by myself. And it was
Yeah.
kind of funny, some of the things I used to do by myself. I mean, I did crown molding by myself. I would take 2x4s and cut them and wedge them against the walls to hold up the crown molding. And I would go and attach it. And I would people all the time, how do you do that by yourself? I mean, cabinets over my head. I made these little jigs that hold the cabinet up on the wall and screw them to the walls and do different things. And, I just did what had to be done. I didn't see limitations. I didn't know how to do everything. But I knew I'd figure it out. I just had to look at it. I had to get started.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that they need to figure it out before they can get started,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not that person. Those thoughts, that analytical mind. My analytical mind is opened up in the doing of something,
Mm.
not the thinking about how I'm going to do it.
It's been a really long journey, but Mike does really well for himself now and does it with no paid advertising. He does it all referral based, and this is how.
So I went out and really started working hard. Now I have a building. I was able to get my Google place back, started doing work, and really that was the biggest thing I did. I started asking everybody for a review, and I phrase it like this: is there any reason why you feel that you would not be able to give me a 5-star review?
Mm.
And, so I'm telling them exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a 5-star, and is there any reason why you couldn't?
Yeah.
And almost all of them said, no, there's no reason why I wouldn't give you a 5-star review. Okay, great. Here's the link. If you go ahead and
Yeah.
click on this, leave me a review.
Oh,
And that's kind of how I started getting my 5-star reviews. And if anybody, there was one customer that said, oh, I don't know if I give you a 5-star review because we did have this, this, and this. Well, what can I do to make that right?
yeah.
What can I do to get you, what would I have to do to get you to leave me a 5-star review? And people are just be honest. They're like, well, I was upset that you only bid one rollout and I wish I had two. So you want another rollout in that cabinet? Done. I'll do it right now. Will you give me a 5-star review if I do? Absolutely. Done. And I do it like, man, that $50 for a review?
Oh, yeah.
That review is worth so much more than $50.
It's golden. And you have so many 5-star reviews. I was shocked. I went to your page, and typically with remodel companies and construction companies, it's really hard to have a very high 5-star review ratio, and you were all 5 stars. And I was just dumbfounded. And I thought, okay, what's
I,
his secret? So I'm so glad you shared.
Well, it's kind of funny, I started out advertising in a very prestigious magazine down here called Home and Design.
Mm.
They actually did a luxury home show every year, which I would get a booth in, and that created a kind of lot of work. All that died with COVID. They stopped doing that
Mm.
during COVID, and I stopped advertising. But I got to the point where it's like I don't need to advertise because what you said is absolutely truth. If you look up all of the remodeling contractors, all the cabinet companies, anything that I do here in Naples, I am the only company with all 5-star reviews. Now the truth is I actually had one bad review,
Oh,
but it
really?
wasn't from somebody I did. It wasn't from somebody I did work with. Well, reviews are funny. Anybody can leave a review for any reason.
Yeah.
If now they actually have things in place. If somebody leaves an erroneous review, you can get it removed, but it's a process. It's pretty hard to do.
Mm.
But if they say no, I really know he did that. That's their I did work with that company or I did hire that company and this is what they did. Then they'll leave it on. So what happened was this was I don't know 5, 6, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, 7, 8 years ago. I used to golf on Wednesdays. So I never worked on Wednesdays. That was my day off. And so I made an appointment to go out and give a bid on a Thursday. And this is down on Marco Island. It's about a 40-minute drive from my office where I'm at. And that morning, I would usually call my appointments and just verify, hey, just calling to confirm the appointment today at such and such time and whatever. And so I called him up, and he's like, "Oh, you missed it, buddy." Well, what do you mean I missed it? And he's like, "Yeah, it was yesterday." And I'm like, "Oh man." I'm like, "No, I have down today." He's like, "No, you told me Wednesday." And I knew I didn't tell him Wednesday because I didn't ever schedule anything on Wednesday. But I didn't even argue with him. I just told him, "Oh, you're right. It is my fault. I am so sorry. I must have screwed that up. I wrote down the wrong day. I apologize profusely. Well, hopefully I can make it up to you. Would you like to reschedule? I can come today. I can come next week, whatever." And he's like, "Oh no, you blew your chance. I want nothing to do with you. You wasted my time. I waited for an hour for you." And I'm like, "Well, I am so sorry." I'm like, I can't believe I did that. I'm totally screwed up. My fault. I took full responsibility. And I said, "Well, look, if things don't work out, if you're still looking for another competitive bid, give me a call. I'll still come out and I'll give you a bid." And he's like, "Nope," and hung up. And then the next day, he leaves a 1-star review and goes over there and blasts me. And he says what it was that he set an appointment and we had an appointment set up and I didn't show and he waited an hour for me. And so he'll never hire this company because of that and stuff. And I went from five stars to 4.8 overnight, and like, oh, that killed
Yeah,
me.
that's a gut check.
And it bothered me, and like 2 years went by, and one day I thought, why don't I just call that guy and just reason with him?
Yeah.
So I still had his phone number. I called him up and I says, "Hey, you remember me? Blah 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 blah." And he's like, "Oh yeah, why are you calling me?" And I'm like, "Well, you went online and you left this review, and I just don't think that it was really fair. If I would have done work for you, then I understand you going on leaving review. But if you go and you look at my page, I have all 5-star reviews except for you. You're the only one. You're the only bad review I have. And I didn't even do work for you. You didn't even get to see a chance to see what I could do." And I just kind of felt it was unfair. I was just hoping that you might reconsider and maybe take that down and allow me to keep my reputation intact. And so he did. And that's how I got the one bad review taken off, because it
Jeez.
really wasn't a true review of what I did or how I did it. And I've had, I don't know how many jobs I've done here in Naples. Only about maybe 10% of people that say they're going to give me a review actually follow through and give me a review.
Oh,
Most of my
interesting.
clients are like, "Oh yeah, we'll give you a great review. We'll give you a great
Yeah.
review." And that's probably where I could do better, is follow up with them.
Mm.
"Hey, did you have a chance to leave that review? Hey," and I get real busy, and that's kind of things where I've let things go. But no, having 5-star reviews is huge, and keeping that.
Yeah.
And I've been in situations where, man, something went wrong on the job, something happened. I know the homeowner wasn't happy, and well, maybe I better not ask them for a review. What if they leave me a bad one? What if they, and I go back to like, no, is there any reason why you couldn't leave me a 5-star review? I go back to that question every time.
Yeah.
And, I did have one customer say, I'd rather not leave you a review." Fair enough.
Yeah.
A lot of people is like, "Oh, well, I don't have a Google account, so I don't want to use, you have to have a Google account to leave a Google review." Oh, hey, there's Facebook. Hey, there's Yelp. Hey, there's, and truth is, between House, Yelp, Porch, Facebook. I don't know. There's 3 or 4 other ones too I can't even think of. I've been fortunate enough to have reviews on all of these sites. And so I kind of have good, well-rounded reviews on a lot of different platforms, not just Google, not just that. But I will say Google does report all of the reviews regardless of what platform they're on.
Hmm.
And so I think that's really helped me and strengthened me to get those numbers up and keep that reputation. And then I sell it. It's the first thing I tell clients. It's one of kind of my closing pitch is I tell them they need to do their research. No matter who they're going to hire, they need to do their research. Don't believe me, I'm licensed because I tell you.
Yeah.
Don't believe me, I'm licensed because it says so on my card. I could print these cards out on my computer. I
Yeah.
could put whatever number I want in there. It's not valid until you look it up. And I'll give them the website. Go to the state website, go to the county website, look this up, verify that I'm a licensed contractor, and then read my reviews and read everybody's reviews. Because now, especially today, like 15 years ago, no one wanted to leave reviews. People
Yeah.
would ask you, can you give me 5 references? I want to know your last 5 customers. Of course, I'm only going to give them my favorite customers that were tickled pink with my work.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give them somebody that's upset with me.
Right.
So it's more authentic now with the reviews, as long as you don't have false reviews on there.
Yeah.
And I can't even tell you how many jobs I've gotten. I had one little old lady. She came in and she knew exactly what she wanted. She said, I don't want to waste your time. I want that white cabinet. I want this countertop. I want that backsplash. Yada 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 yada. I need a bid. Can you give me a bid? I'm like, yeah, I'll have to come to your house. Well, do you have to come to my house? I'm like, well, yeah, I do. I have to come to your house. Well, I don't want to waste your time. I'm like, you're not wasting my time. I do it for free. I'd be happy to come out there. So I go out there, I measure everything up. I give her that same speech. And she comes in about 2 weeks later and she says, Mike, I think I'm going to go with you. And I'm like, great. She's like, well, I had no intention of it. I'm like, oh, what did I do? I'm thinking I offended her. I said the wrong thing, And she says, no, it wasn't you at all. Well, it was you. She's like, you told me to check reviews. She's like, my neighbor had a remodeling company come in and do a remodel in her unit, and she was tickled pink. I loved it. The job looked great. I got a quote from them. She's like, to be honest, I was only getting a quote just to make sure that they were being honest on their price. I was going to go with them. I had already made up my mind. That's why I told you several times I didn't want to waste your time because I wasn't going to use you.
Yeah.
She's like, but I went online and looked at his reviews, and 50% of his reviews were poor.
Ooh, wow.
100% of your reviews are good.
Yeah.
And so she's like, even though my neighbor was happy and I hoped I would have I just didn't give me enough confidence to go with him.
Yeah.
So I decided to go with you. And similar stories like that have happened time and time again. And it comes down to really do what you say you're going to do. And then if you have an unsatisfied customer, just ask them point blank, what do you want? What will make you happy?
Yeah.
What do I have to do for you to leave me a 5-star review?
Yeah.
And I let them know that's my goal. My goal is for you to leave me a 5-star review. And sometimes you pay for it. I got to spend $300 or $500 or something like that to do this or do that.
Yeah.
And own my mistakes. If it's my mistake, if I messed it up, I'm going to pay for it. I'm not going to try to pawn it off or give some excuse and try to push that on to them.
Yeah.
I own my mistakes and I pay for them. But treating your customer like that, I think it makes them feel important. It makes them feel like this guy really wants to do a good job. He's genuine. He's authentic. He really wants this, and people trust that. People believe that.
So what would you is that what you would say is the main contributor to just your customer base? Is that how you get most of your customers, is through word of mouth and your reviews, or is there another way that you get most of your business?
No, I don't. Right now, I don't advertise at all, other than so the company that hosts my website, they do some SEO work,
Okay.
some AdWords, some different things like that. So,
Yeah.
and that's all included in my package that I pay and all of that stuff, which isn't very expensive at all. So there's a little bit of that, a little bit of SEO work on it from my website that gets me to pull up on the first few pages. But the biggest contributing factor is I think 2 things is what customers have told me. Number one, my reviews. They're well-written reviews.
Yeah.
They're educated people. They talk about me personally. They talk about my employees personally and how personable we were, how we helped out in the design. And I didn't script any of that. I didn't tell them what to say. I didn't suggest what they say. Those are all genuine reviews. That's been the biggest thing. And then also, if you go on my website, you see a picture of my family on there. You see my story, and I tell a little bit about working for my dad and some of the things that he taught me.
Yeah.
And I've had so many people say, I loved your story. I loved what you wrote on there. It was very personal.
Man. Despite doing really well, he's done so by learning from his mistakes. And every single entrepreneur out there makes mistakes, and it's all about our attitude and how we approach things.
Like with the last fiasco we had with almost going into business with my neighbor sharing the showroom. She said, don't you regret that? And I'm like, no, I learned. I learned from that. And it actually motivated me. It made me, oh yeah, I'll show you.
Yeah.
I mean, it lit a fire underneath me,
Yeah.
so I used that. In fact, what's that? There was a comedian or an actor. I'm trying to remember his name. He's a British actor. I just can't think of his name. But
Ooh.
he said that he was taught in the acting world to use the difficulty. So when it comes to improvisation, if you walk into a chair, use it in what you're doing. Use the difficulty. Use it for your good. Use it part of the act. Use it just go with it. Use it. What can you learn from this? How can you apply this to what you're doing? Use the difficulty.
Yeah.
I love that saying, use the difficulty, because that's really what I've tried to do. When I look back, not that I went in thinking, oh, I'm going to use this experience. At the time, I'm like, oh, I can't believe this is happening to me.
Yeah.
But as I look back, I'm like, what can I learn? What am I not going to do?
Yeah.
What am I going to do? That's that first job where I had to replace all that fascia. I'll never repeat that mistake again.
Yeah.
And I'll make sure of it. And so you just have to learn from the difficulty. It's one of the 1,000 ways you learn how to not do it.
It's so true. Yeah. And it's all about attitude and how you solve the problem. It just reminds me when I have a client and you know how your relationship with every client is a little bit different, right? Sometimes they are your absolute best friend, and sometimes they reach out to you for a problem, you solve it for them, and then there's a disconnect, and there's just like a quick thank you, bye. And it just depends on the person and the personality. But one thing that happens whenever there's a problem that happens, I get excited in a way, because I'm like, man, now is my time to shine, and like I can really show
Right.
how awesome of a worker I am, and how good I am at this. And I'm not necessarily excited that they're experiencing a problem, but I just have to have that attitude of, okay, this is where I show my value. This is cool. And when you fight through a hard thing, then it's rewarding.
That's why you'll be successful. Yeah. Right there. There. I'm going to prove myself.
Yeah.
My integrity was just questioned. Therefore, I am going to prove myself. Yeah. When you have that attitude that you're going to, instead of being offended, how dare they? I can't believe they said, I can't, I'm angry they asked me to do that. No.
Get you fired up.
Prove them wrong.
Yeah.
Prove them wrong. Totally. Every time. You'll be successful.
Yeah. Thank you. And a big lesson that has recently occurred to me is that I have to do that with myself too, to prove to myself that I am a high quality person, because when I encounter a problem for myself, I can either wallow in my pity, or I can say, all right, Cole, this is your time to prove it to yourself that you can do this. And because you don't really know how much you can do until you try to push that limit, and that's a much harder thing. It's easy to prove it to clients, but it's hard to prove it to yourself sometimes.
No, you hit the nail on the head. That's one thing I'm grateful for my wife. She reminds me that all the time. Yeah. I'll tell her, here's what's going on. Here's what I'm doing, blah, 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 blah. And she'll be like, good for you. Look at you.
That's
look at
awesome.
What you did there. Look at you, how you like, I'd be pissed off about that. She takes it as like, that's the exact opposite of how I would have reacted, but good for you for doing that. Like she sees that, it's like, even if I get frustrated with my employees.
Oh yeah.
And I'll be like, oh, they did exactly what I told them to do, or something stupid like that, Yeah. And she'll remind me all the time. She's like, Michael, you know why if they knew what you knew, they wouldn't work for you. You have to remember that. If they knew what you knew, they would not work for you.
That's very true.
You have to cut them some slack. And I'm like, got me again. All right, fine. Have a better attitude.
Yeah,
but no, realizing what you're capable of, and you're like, it's okay to give yourself one of these.
It is, yeah.
You did good. You did that. You went over that. That was a hard thing, and you handled it well. And that's I recently had a customer where we had a disagreement on some stuff, and he got really petty and personal, and
Mm,
uh, questioned my integrity verbally in text,
mm,
and really got after me. And it's something I easily could have been offended or lashed back out or, oh yeah, and I didn't. It was just a matter of fact. I reverted to the contract. The contract says this. This is what it is. This is what we're going to do. Here's what I can do for you.
yeah.
And I didn't take the bait of him trying to insult me or make things personal. I refuse to get on that level with customers. I try to maintain absolute professionalism.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, I'm going to extend kindness just to show him that he's wrong.
Yeah.
I'm getting excited. Oh yeah, I'm going to show him.
Yeah.
You know,
Totally. Like,
and
okay.
it's I know I like that. That's what you got to do uh, to get that fire lit up underneath you, I guess.
Yeah, totally. Thank goodness for awesome partners like our wives that can
Yeah.
help us see it sometimes, because it's not always easy to see it in the moment, when you
No.
have the attitude of not proving it to yourself or proving it to your client. Um, but yeah, man. Well, if anyone listening to this needs a kitchen remodel in Naples, Florida, a link is going to be below for you to get in contact with Mike. And Mike, is there anything else that you guys do other than kitchen remodels and cabinetry and all that? Any other services you guys offer?
All types of interior remodeling. We do
Okay.
full condo and house renovations. Anything interior at all. That's what we do. I make my own custom cabinetry. I've got a big, large CNC machine. We're able to do some pretty fun things that a lot of the smaller guys can't do.
Well, cool. Yeah, there will be a link in the description below if you want to get in touch with Mike. And Mike, thank you so much for doing this, man. I really
Oh, Cole,
appreciate
I
it.
appreciate the opportunity. This has been fun.
That was way fun. I can't tell you how grateful I am that you listened all the way through. This is a brand new channel, and every little thing means a lot. It's actually doing a lot better than I anticipated, and for that I'm grateful. And also, since it's so new, it would mean a ton if you could leave a review on whatever podcast platform you listen, and also like and subscribe the video on YouTube if you're watching it. Until the next time, my name is Cole Tanner. This is Mentor Mountain. We'll see ya.